My daughter said, "I can't be responsible for you anymore," and those 7 words changed everything between us. She said them standing in my kitchen doorway with her arms crossed, her voice flat and final, like she was reading from a script she'd practiced in her car on the way over. I was 73 years old. I'd raised her alone after her father left when she was 4. I'd worked double shifts at the hospital for 18 years so she could have dance lessons and college without loans. I'd been there for every scraped knee, every broken heart, every milestone. And now she stood there in my kitchen, the kitchen where I'd made her breakfast before school for 14 years, telling me she was done. I didn't cry. I just set down my coffee cup and said, "All right, Christine." She blinked like she'd expected an argument. Her shoulders were tensed up, ready for a fight. But I had nothing left to argue with. For 2 years, I'd been calling her when I needed help with things I couldn't manage alone anymore, the gutters, full of leaves that were starting to rot the fascia. The prescription I couldn't pick up because my car was making that grinding noise again, and I was afraid to drive it on the highway. The property tax form that looked like it was written in a foreign language with all its codes and exemptions. Small things, or so I thought. Each time she'd sigh before saying yes. That sigh. It started small, almost imperceptible, like a little breath of resignation. But over the months it grew longer, heavier, until it felt like she was exhaling her entire patience before even hearing what I needed. Each time, the silence on her end of the phone got a little longer, stretched out like a rubber band about to snap. And each time I told myself I was imagining it, that she was just busy, that this is what daughters did for their aging mothers. But that morning in March, with rain drumming on the window behind her and the sky gray and heavy with more coming, she made it clear. She had her own life, her own kids, her own problems, her own marriage that was apparently struggling, though she didn't say that part out loud. And I needed to figure mine out. "I love you, Mom," she'd said, like that somehow made it okay. "But I can't keep doing this. Every week it's something. And I can't." After she left, I sat at that kitchen table for a long time. The house felt different, bigger somehow, emptier. The silence had a weight to it I'd never noticed before. I could hear the clock ticking in the hallway, the one my mother had given me when I got married. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator, that low mechanical sound you stop noticing until everything else goes quiet. I could hear the rain in the gutters I still couldn't clean myself, water sloshing and overflowing because the downspout was clogged with last fall's leaves. That's when something settled in me. Not anger, not even hurt really. Just a cool, clear understanding that I'd been living wrong. I'd spent 2 years asking for help like a child asks a parent. I'd made myself small and needy because I thought that's what happened when you got old. You shrank. You needed. You became a burden. Your children's burden. I'd watched my own mother do it, calling me for every little thing until I dreaded seeing her name on my caller ID, and now, without meaning to, I'd become her. But sitting there alone in my kitchen, listening to the rain and the clock and the refrigerator, I realized I wasn't a burden. I was just disorganized. So I stopped asking. The first week was the hardest. I had a list of things I'd been meaning to call Christine about. The back porch step was loose and wobbling every time I stepped on it. I needed someone to program the new TV, remote because the old one had finally died and this new one had about 40 buttons I didn't understand. The smoke detector in the hallway was beeping that low battery beep every 45 seconds and driving me absolutely nuts. Instead of reaching for the phone, I sat down with a notepad and wrote everything out. Then I started solving. The smoke detector just needed a battery, 9 volt. I watched a YouTube video. Some kid who couldn't have been more than 20 explaining it like he was teaching a kindergarten class, and I changed it myself. Took me 20 minutes because I had to find my step stool in the garage and then figure out how to twist the cover off. But when that beeping stopped, I felt like I'd climbed a mountain. The remote took longer. I called the cable company and sat on hold for 30 minutes listening to music that was probably designed to make you hang up. But eventually a nice young man named Derek walked me through it step by step, patient as anything, never once making me feel stupid for not knowing which button was which. The porch step I hired someone to fix. Found him on a neighborhood app my friend Donna told me about. His name was Miguel, and he showed up exactly when he said he would, which already put him ahead of half the contractors I dealt with in my life. Cost me $60, and he was done in 30 minutes, replaced the whole board and tested it himself, jumping on it a few times to make sure it was solid. It felt strange, paying someone to do what Christine used to do for free. But it also felt clean. Transactional, no guilt attached, no sighing, no sense that I was stealing someone's Saturday afternoon, pulling them away from their real life to deal with my trivial problems. By the end of that first month, I had a system. I went to the office supply store and bought a 3-ring binder, the kind I used to use for work back when I was keeping patient files organized at the hospital. I labeled dividers, insurance, taxes, medical records, bills, home maintenance, legal documents. Everything in one place. I spent an entire weekend going through the boxes in my closet, the drawer in my desk, the files scattered across 3 different rooms. 40 years of paper. I threw away so much. Old utility bills from 1987. Receipts for appliances I didn't even own anymore. Insurance policies that had lapsed decades ago. What was left, I organized, chronologically, alphabetically, whatever made sense for that particular section. And I typed up a master list, a table of contents basically, so I could find anything in under a minute. I set up automatic payments for my utilities so I wouldn't forget and end up with a late fee or worse, a shut-off notice. I hired a lawn service that came every 2 weeks, 2 guys with a truck who could do in an hour what used to take me all day when I was younger. I started keeping a list on my phone of small repairs and would tackle one every weekend. Sometimes I could do it myself. Sometimes I needed to hire someone. But either way, I was handling it. Christine didn't call to check on me. Not once. I told myself I didn't expect her to. She'd drawn her line and I was respecting it. But late at night, when the house was dark and quiet and the loneliness felt like a physical presence sitting next to me on the couch, I'd wonder if she thought about me at all. If she felt guilty, if she told herself I was fine because it was easier than admitting she'd walked away from her own mother, if she told Brad what she'd said to me, or if she kept it to herself, ashamed. My son Paul lived 3 states over in Pennsylvania and called every Sunday like clockwork, usually right after church. He was the steady one, always had been. When I told him what Christine had said, he went quiet for a long moment. I could hear his kids in the background, arguing about something, and his wife Sharon telling them to take it outside. "That's harsh, Ma." It's honest, I said. I'd rather have honest than polite. Still, you're her mom. You were there for her whole life and now she just cuts you off? She didn't cut me off. She just set a boundary. Sounds like cutting you off to me. Paul, don't. I don't want you kids fighting over this. He sighed. You need anything? I can come down next month if I'm okay, sweetheart, really. And I was. That was the surprising part. The more I handled on my own, the steadier I felt, stronger, like I'd been leaning on a crutch. I didn't actually need, and now my legs were remembering how to hold me up. Like I'd been telling myself a story about being old and helpless, and now I was discovering the story wasn't true. I started going to a water aerobics class at the community center on Tuesday and Thursday mornings. It was something my doctor had recommended for my arthritis, said the water would be gentle on my joints. The first day I almost didn't go. I stood in the parking lot in my swimsuit and cover-up feeling ridiculous, like everyone would stare at this old woman trying to exercise. But I went in anyway. Made friends with a group of women around my age. There was Barbara, who'd been a school teacher for 40 years. Jane, who'd worked in a factory and had hands that looked like they'd built houses. Donna, who I already knew from church but didn't know she came to water aerobics. And Rita, who'd been a dancer in New York City back in the 60s, and still moved like she could hear music the rest of us couldn't. We'd get coffee after class sometimes at the diner across the street and talk about our kids, our health, our lives. One of them, Barbara, had a daughter who'd moved to Arizona and barely called. Maybe once a month if Barbara was lucky, usually just a text on her birthday and Christmas. Another Zhang had a son in prison. Drug charges. He'd be out in 3 years, but she didn't know if she'd see him, didn't know if he'd come back to her or just disappear into whatever life he'd built behind bars. Listening to them reminded me that everybody's carrying something. Christine's rejection wasn't special. It wasn't some unique cruelty visited upon me alone. It was just one version of a story playing out in families everywhere. Kids who hurt you. Kids who love you but can't show it the way you need. Summer came hot and humid the way it does in the South. I planted tomatoes and basil in pots on my back deck because my knees couldn't handle getting down on the ground to tend a real garden anymore. But the pots worked fine. I'd sit out there in the evenings with a glass of iced tea and watch the sun go down behind the trees, the sky turning orange and pink and purple. I read 4 books that summer. Mystery novels mostly, the kind with a smart old lady detective who solved crimes everyone else missed. I learned how to use the grocery delivery app so I didn't have to lug heavy bags anymore. A nice young woman named Keisha delivered every Thursday, always brought the bags right into my kitchen, always asked if I needed help putting anything away. Small things, but they added up to a life that felt mine again. Not borrowed, not dependent, mine. Then in August, Christine called. I almost didn't answer. When her name lit up my phone screen, my stomach dropped like I'd missed a step on a staircase. My hand hovered over the phone, shaking slightly. 4 months of silence and now this. But I swiped to accept and said hello like nothing had happened, like we'd just talked yesterday. Hey, Mom. Her voice was tight, strained, that tone she used when she was trying not to cry. I need to ask you something. I waited. Didn't fill the silence. That was something I'd learned. People tell you more when you're not rushing to make them comfortable. Brad's company is transferring him to Seattle. We're moving in 6 weeks. Brad was her husband. 15 years married. He worked for some tech company doing something with software I'd never fully understood. Seattle was 2,300 miles away. Might as well be another planet. That's a big change, I said carefully. Yeah. A pause. I could hear her breathing uneven. The kids are freaking out. Jessie doesn't want to leave her school, and Tyler's saying he'll just stay here and live with friends, which is insane. He's 14. It'll be an adjustment. Another pause, longer this time. I knew what was coming before she said it. Could feel it in the air like you can feel a storm building. I was thinking, maybe they could stay with you. Just until the school year ends. We'd come back and get them in June. And by then, they'd have had time to say goodbye to their friends properly and finish out the year, and it wouldn't be so traumatic for them. No. The word came out calm and final. I surprised myself with how easily it landed, how little doubt was in it. What? Christine's voice went sharp, shocked. Mom, I'm not asking you to raise them. Just let them stay for a few months. You told me you couldn't be responsible for me anymore. So I stopped asking you for help. Now you're asking me to be responsible for your children while you move across the country. The answer's no. Silence on the other end. I could hear her breathing faster now. Could almost see her face, the way her jaw would be clenched, the way her eyes would be filling with angry tears. That's different, she finally said. How? Because you're their grandmother. And we need help. This is a huge opportunity for Brad. He'd be managing an entire division, and the kids are being selfish about it, and I thought you'd understand. I thought you'd want to help. I do understand. But that doesn't mean I'm going to do it. You're asking me to append my life to take on 2 teenagers full-time, to deal with their schedules and their attitudes and their needs for 9 months. I'm 73, Christine. I'm not equipped to handle that. I don't have the energy or the space or, frankly, the desire. My voice stayed level. That was important. I wasn't yelling. Wasn't attacking, just stating facts. Wow, her voice cracked. So you're punishing me? I'm not punishing you. I'm doing exactly what you told me to do. I'm being responsible for myself, not for you, not for your kids. Just me. You're being selfish. Maybe, but I learned from the best. I regretted it the second I said it. That kind of jab doesn't help anything. But it was out there now, hanging between us like smoke. She hung up. I set the phone down and stared at it for a while. My hands were shaking. Not from anger, but from adrenaline. From the strangeness of saying no to my own daughter. From the realization that I'd just potentially burned a bridge I'd spent 73 years building. But I didn't call her back, didn't apologize, didn't soften. For the first time in maybe my whole life, I'd drawn a boundary and meant it. The next few weeks were quiet in a way that felt heavy, like waiting for thunder after you see lightning. Paul called and I told him what happened. He listened, didn't interrupt, which I appreciated. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. You gotta do what's right for you, Ma. You think I'm wrong? I think Christine's used to you saying yes. And she's gonna be mad for a while that you said no. But that doesn't make you wrong. She thinks I'm punishing her. Maybe you are. A little bit. But maybe she needs to understand what it felt like when she did it to you. I thought about that for a long time after we hung up. Was I punishing her? Was this revenge dressed up as self-care? I turned it over in my mind like a stone, looking at it from different angles. And I kept coming back to the same conclusion. Even if there was some part of me that wanted her to feel what I'd felt, that didn't make my no less valid. I genuinely couldn't take care of two teenagers for 9 months. I didn't want to, and wanting to and being able to weren't the same thing. Christine didn't call again. I heard through Paul that they'd moved to Seattle on schedule, and the kids went with them, miserable and resentful. Jessie was apparently crying every night and refusing to try at her new school. Tyler got in trouble within the first week for skipping class and was caught smoking weed behind the gym. Christine was stressed and overwhelmed, fighting with Brad about the move, about the kids, about everything. Part of me ached hearing that. The middle part that wants to fix everything, that wants her daughter to be happy, even when her daughter hasn't been kind. That wants to call and say, "It's okay, I'll help, tell me what you need." But I didn't reach out. Fall came cool and beautiful. The leaves turned gold and red, and I took walks in the mornings through my neighborhood, watching the world wake up. The water aerobics ladies threw a birthday party for Barbara at the diner, and we ate cake and laughed about getting old, about our bodies falling apart, about how we couldn't remember what we'd had for breakfast, but could recall every detail of our wedding days. I started volunteering at the library on Wednesday afternoons, shelving books and helping people find things. It got me out of the house, gave me a reason to brush my hair and put on real clothes instead of living in sweatpants. The head librarian was a woman named Margaret, maybe 60, with gray hair in a long braid and glasses on a chain around her neck. She treated books like they were sacred objects, handling them carefully, always making sure they went back in exactly the right place. "Order matters," she told me once. "Everything in its place. That's how people find what they're looking for." I thought about that a lot. Order, everything in its place. That's what I've been building in my life. Not chaos, not need, just simple order. In October, I got a letter in the mail, handwritten, Christine's looping script on the envelope, the way she'd written since middle school when she decided cursive was prettier than print. I almost threw it away unopened. Stood there at my mailbox with it in my hand debating. But curiosity got the better of me. Inside was 2 pages front and back, written on cream-colored stationery I recognized from the set I'd given her 3 Christmases ago. "Mom, I've been trying to write this for weeks, and I keep starting over because I don't know how to say what I need to say without sounding like I'm making excuses. I was wrong, not just about asking you to take the kids. About all of it. About the way I treated you before we moved. About making you feel like you were a burden. About that day in your kitchen when I said I couldn't be responsible for you anymore. The truth is, I was overwhelmed. Brad was working all the time, 70-hour weeks, and I was basically a single parent. The kids were in a million activities, and I was driving them everywhere, being everyone's personal Uber driver. I was trying to keep the house clean and make meals and be present and available and fun, and I was failing at all of it. And every time you called, it felt like one more thing on my list. One more person needing me when I had nothing left to give. But that wasn't fair to you. You weren't asking for much. You were asking for help the way any person does when they need it. And instead of being honest and saying I was struggling, instead of asking Brad to step up or cutting back on the kids' activities or figuring out a better system, I made you feel like you were too much, like your needs were unreasonable, like you were this burden I had to carry. And the truth is, you've never been a burden. You raised me alone. You worked doubles at the hospital so I could have dance lessons I barely appreciated at the time. You were at every recital, every parent-teacher conference, every moment that mattered. You taught me how to be strong and independent, and then when you needed me to be those things for you, I threw it back in your face. Moving to Seattle has been hard, really hard. The kids are struggling, and I'm struggling, and Brad's working even more hours in his new position, and I feel like I'm drowning most days. But it's also given me space to see things more clearly. Distance has a way of doing that, I guess. I miss you. The kids miss you. Jessie asked the other day if we could call Grandma, and I realized we haven't talked in months, and that's my fault. All my fault. I keep thinking about the fact that you raised me by yourself and never once made me feel like I was too much, even though I'm sure I was. Even though I'm sure there were nights when you were exhausted and touched out and just wanted everyone to leave you alone. You never said it. You never made me feel like I was stealing your life. And I did that to you. I made you feel exactly like that. I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I don't even know if I'd forgive me. But I wanted you to know that I see it now. What I did. How I hurt you. And I'm so sorry. I love you, Mom. I've always loved you. I just forgot how to show it. Love, Christine. I read it 3 times. Then I folded it back up and put it in the drawer with my other important papers, in the section labeled Family Correspondence that I'd created just for things like this. Letters worth keeping. Words that mattered. I didn't respond right away. Part of me wanted to. Part of me wanted to call her immediately and tell her it was okay, that I understood that we could move past it and go back to how things were before. But another part of me, the part that had been growing stronger over these months, knew that if I did that too quickly, nothing would really change. She'd feel relieved and absolved, and I'd go back to being the mother who absorbed everything and asked for nothing and made herself small so her daughter could feel big. So I waited. 2 weeks later, I sent a card. Nothing fancy, just a simple note card with a bird on the front. I kept my response short. Christine, thank you for your letter. I appreciate your honesty, and I know it wasn't easy to write. I'm doing well. I've been keeping busy and taking care of things on my own. It's been good for me. Hard at first, but good. I'm not angry with you. I want you to know that. Anger takes too much energy, and I don't have it to spare. But I do need you to understand that I can't go back to the way things were. I won't make myself small so you can feel less guilty. And I won't pretend I don't need help sometimes just to make things easier for you. If we're going to rebuild this, it has to be as 2 adults who respect each other's limits. Not as a mother who needs and a daughter who resents. Not as a grandmother who's expected to drop everything and a daughter who only calls when she wants something. I love you. I always will. But love doesn't mean I have to accept being treated poorly. And love doesn't mean you get to walk away when I'm inconvenient and come back when you need me. Let's take this slow. Let's figure out what a healthy relationship looks like for both of us. I'm willing to do that work if you are. Mom, I mailed it and then I tried not to think about it. Tried not to imagine her reading it. Tried not to worry about how she'd react. I went to water aerobics. I volunteered at the library. I had dinner with Donna and Rita and we talked about a documentary we'd all watched about World War II, I didn't hear back for a while. Thanksgiving came and went. Paul flew in and we had dinner together, just the two of us. He made a turkey using some recipe he'd found online that involved brining it for 24 hours and roasting it in a paper bag. It turned out perfectly moist and flavorful. I made my mother's stuffing recipe, the one with sausage and apples and sage. We watched football and didn't talk about Christine until the very end, when he was getting ready to leave. She called me, he said, pulling on his coat. Last week. Oh? Asked about you. How you were doing. If I'd seen you, what did you tell her? The truth? That you're doing great. Better than great, actually. That you seem happier than you've been in years. I thought about that. Was I happier? Maybe, or maybe just more at peace. More settled in myself. She wanted to know if you were mad at her. What did you say? I said you'd have to answer that yourself. I hugged him goodbye and watched him drive away, his taillights disappearing down the street. Then I went back inside and cleaned up the kitchen, putting away leftovers and washing dishes by hand, even though I had a dishwasher. Sometimes I liked the ritual of it. The warm water. The simple repetitive motion. It was peaceful. Then, a week before Christmas, my phone rang. Christine. This time I answered on the second ring. Hi, Mom. Hi, sweetheart. A long pause. I could hear noise in the background. Kids arguing about something. A dog barking. When had they gotten a dog? I got your card, she said quietly. Okay, you're right. About all of it. Her voice wavered like she was trying not to cry. I don't want to lose you. But I also don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to be the daughter you deserve. You don't have to fix it all at once, I said. You just have to show up, honestly, without keeping score. Without expecting me to be someone I'm not. I can do that. She was definitely crying now. I could hear it in her voice, that thickness. Can I call you? Like regularly? Not just when I need something? I'd like that. Okay, a shaky breath. Okay, I will. I promise. We talked for 20 minutes. She told me about Jessie's new school, how she'd finally made a friend, a girl named Morgan who was into anime and art just like Jessie was. She told me about Tyler's basketball team, how he'd made starting lineup and was actually enjoying it. She told me about the house they were renting with a view of the mountains, how the sunsets were incredible, all orange and purple over the peaks. I told her about my water aerobics class, about how Barbara had slipped on some ice and broken her wrist, and we'd all brought her meals for 2 weeks. I told her about the book club I'd joined at the library, how we were reading classics I'd somehow missed the first time around. I told her about the new coffee shop that opened down the street, run by a young couple who'd moved here from Portland and made the best lattes I'd ever tasted. It wasn't a big conversation, wasn't dramatic or full of tears and long apologies. It was just normal, easy, the way talking to your daughter should be. When we hung up, I felt lighter, like I'd been carrying something heavy and hadn't realized it until I set it down. Over the next few months, Christine called every week, sometimes twice a week. We'd talk about small things, everyday things. She told me about her job, how she'd started working part-time at a marketing firm. I told her about the quilt I was making, a pattern my mother had taught me years ago that I'd finally decided to try. She sent pictures of the kids. I sent her pictures of my tomato plants in the spring, how big they'd gotten. She stopped treating me like I was fragile. Stop using that careful voice people use around the elderly, like we might break if they speak too loud or move too fast. And I stopped waiting for her to let me down. Stopped bracing for disappointment every time the phone rang. It wasn't perfect. We still had moments of friction, times when old patterns tried to reassert themselves. But we were learning, both of us. In March, a year after she'd stood in my kitchen and told me she couldn't be responsible for me anymore, she flew back for a visit. Just her, no kids, no Brad, a long weekend. Girls' trip, she called it. We didn't talk about that day directly. Didn't rehash or dissect or try to explain away what had happened. But it was there between us, this thing we'd both survived, this pain we'd both moved through. On her last morning, sitting at my kitchen table with coffee and toast, the same table where she'd said those words a year earlier, she reached across and squeezed my hand. "You seem happy, Mom." "I am. I'm glad." Her eyes were shiny with tears she was trying to hold back. "I'm really glad. And I'm sorry it took me hurting you to get here." "Sometimes that's how it works," I said. "Sometimes people have to fall apart before they can come back together in a better way. Still, I wish I'd figured it out sooner." "Me too. But we're here now. That's what matters." After she left, I cleaned up the breakfast dishes and stood at the sink looking out at the backyard. The tomatoes were just starting to sprout in their pots, little green shoots pushing up through the soil. The lawn service had been by the day before, and everything looked neat and trim. A cardinal landed on the fence, bright red against the wood, and sat there singing for a few minutes before flying away. My life wasn't big, wasn't flashy or impressive by anybody's standards but mine. But it was mine, fully mine. And I'd built it with my own 2 hands after being told I was too much, too needy, too old to matter. I'd stopped asking. And in stopping, I'd found something I didn't know I'd lost. My dignity, my independence, my sense that I was still a whole person, not just someone's mother or someone's burden or someone's obligation. Christine had given me that in a strange way. By walking away, by cutting me loose, she'd forced me to stand on my own. And standing on my own had reminded me that I was stronger than I'd given myself credit for, that I was capable and competent and could figure things out when I had to. I still need help sometimes. I'm not foolish enough to pretend I don't. Last month, I fell in the driveway and scraped my knee pretty badly. I called Paul, and he drove down the next day to check on me, made sure I didn't need stitches, helped me clean out the gutters while he was here. And Christine sent flowers with a card that said, "Please be careful. We need you. We need you. Not I need you to do something for me. Just we need you. Your presence. Your existence. You. It meant something. But now when I ask for help, I ask clearly. I hire professionals for most things. I pay for services without guilt. And when family offers, I accept gratefully without expectation or resentment on either side. It's a better way to live, cleaner, more honest, more adult. And Christine and I? We're finding our way, slowly, carefully, with respect on both sides and love underneath it all. She's coming to visit again in June, bringing the kids this time. They want to see where their grandmother lives, meet my friends, swim in the community pool. I'm looking forward to it, but I'm not rearranging my life for it. They'll fit into my schedule, not the other way around. She's not responsible for me. And I'm not responsible for making her feel okay about the times she's fallen short. We're just two women who love each other, doing our best with what we've got. Learning how to be in relationship without losing ourselves. Learning how to give without resentment and receive without guilt. And honestly, that's enough. More than enough. It's everything. Well, my dears, that's my story. If it resonated with you, if you've been through something similar, or if you're going through it right now, I hope it gave you a little bit of comfort, a little bit of courage. Sometimes the hardest thing we do is let people go so we can find ourselves again. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do is say no. You don't stop being a mother when your children grow up, but you do get to stop sacrificing yourself. You get to have boundaries. You get to have a life that's yours. And anyone who tells you different, anyone who makes you feel selfish for taking care of yourself, well, they're wrong. Plain and simple. If you enjoyed this story, I'd be so grateful if you'd hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel. It helps more than you know, helps other people find these stories when they need them. And drop a comment telling me where you're listening from. I love hearing from folks all over the country, all over the world sometimes. Maine, Texas, California, even heard from someone in Australia once. It makes this feel less like I'm talking into the void and more like we're all sitting around a kitchen table together, sharing our lives. If you'd like to support the channel, there's a link down below, but no pressure whatsoever. Just having you here, listening to an old woman tell her stories, that means the world to me. More than you could possibly know. Take care of yourselves out there. Be kind to each other. But more importantly, be kind to yourself. Set your boundaries. Stand your ground. And remember, you're stronger than you think. Stronger than anyone's given you credit for, probably. Including yourself. Until next time, my dears. Until next time.